Hi there, everybody. This is David, and I just got to talk about something today because it's fascinating to me. We might be getting a successor to Final Fantasy VI. Yes, you heard me right. A successor to Final Fantasy VI, one of my favorite games of all time. Wow, this is fantastic, and I want to tell you all about it today. And I do think that is worth a sub, as I try my hardest to level up to 100,000 subscribers. With your help, your like, and your sub, I just know that I can get there, so thank you so much for that. So, this is coming from the father of Final Fantasy himself, straight out of the horse's mouth, straight from Hironobu Sakaguchi. He says that he wants his next game to be a successor to Final Fantasy VI. So, he recently came out with Fantasian Neo Dimension, and if you don't know his history or who he is, he again was the creator of the Final Fantasy series. Like he was the one. He was the one who spearheaded this, who designed it, who created it, who developed it. He is the main player in the game, and he was with the series all the way up until Final Fantasy X-2. So he was with it for quite a bit of time, and then he left to create his own studio, Mistwalker. And he kind of did his own thing for quite a bit of time, but whenever Fantasian Neo Dimension was being published, guess who he went with? Guess who? He went back full circle, back to Square Enix, so he is now in Square Enix's good graces again, and he is still working with Square Enix. So if anybody can put out a successor to Final Fantasy VI, it's him. It's the father of the Final Fantasy series who originally created Final Fantasy VI the first time. So yeah, this is just absolutely fantastic. He even says right here that he intended the original Fantasian to be his final project before he retired, but now he says that he wants to make another game in the same mold, one that he hopes can be seen as a successor to Final Fantasy VI. So this is fantastic. So you have to think about this. Okay, so is this going to be like a Fantasian 2? We know that Fantasian Dark Edge has been trademarked in Japan, so this could be a sequel to Fantasian, and it's just a spiritual successor to Final Fantasy VI. This could be a sequel to Final Fantasy VI, like maybe it's 1,000 years after the events of Final Fantasy VI or something like that. Or it could be 1,000 years before the events of Final Fantasy VI, going on with like the War of the Magi. We don't know what this could be, but the possibilities are endless, and it is so fun for me to just kind of talk about this and just to see, what your thoughts on it are, what my thoughts on it are, what, more importantly, Sakaguchi's thoughts on it are. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah. He then went on to talk about who he's working with and what he's doing, and he says that he's working on a brand new project with the exact same team that worked on Fantasian Neo Dimension. He had a lot of fun working with them the first time, so now he wants to work with them again. And he says, it's generally going to follow a similar style to my previous works, and it'll be something that can be a successor to Final Fantasy VI in a good way. Our goal is to create something old but new at the same time. It'll be part 2 of my farewell note. So this is just absolutely fascinating. If you think about the original Fantasian Neo Dimension, and you think about its combat, its story structure, just the way that it was very Final Fantasy VI-ish. I noticed that as I was playing through the game. You have a scenario system. First it's Leo with the girls, and then it's Leo with the boys, and then it's Leo with this vampire bitch and the robot, you know what I'm saying? So, and then even after that, it's kind of like split into a world of balance and a world of ruin, or at least a first part and a second part, where, the first part was very linear, and you just kind of went through the various different group configurations, kind of like in the original Final Fantasy VI, and then the second part just kind of threw you off to the wolves. You could do whatever you wanted to do. You could go out and finish all the side quests if you wanted to. All those side quests were there. They were all listed for you. You also had to go through and gather up all of your characters, just like you did in Final Fantasy VI. There was tons of different things to see, tons of different things to do. The world completely changed. Between part 1 and part 2, the world completely changed, all the side quests changed, the dialogue of the characters changed, everything changed, just like it changed between the world of balance and the world of ruin. All your characters were different, with all sorts of different abilities. It was just really, really freaking cool. It was like playing an old school Final Fantasy game. I really, really enjoyed it, I've gotta say. And he's put out some other games by Mistwalker that weren't Final Fantasy, but they were pretty much Final Fantasy. They were like Final Fantasy in all but name. He's put out some great games. Things like Lost Odyssey, which a lot of people say is like the real Final Fantasy 13, and I tend to agree because it's better. There's Last Story on the Wii, which I think really needs a remake or a remaster. Like, put that on the Switch nowadays, or put that on the PlayStation nowadays. It is stuck on the Wii. It was one of the last releases on the Wii because it was part of the whole Operation Rainfall thing that went on. If we could get that put onto the Switch, put onto the PlayStation, I think that would sell like hotcakes. And now that he has these new connections with Square Enix, he could totally do that. Then there's Blue Dragon. Well, I mean, like, I just talked about porting over the Last Story. Why don't we port over all three of these games? Port over Lost Odyssey, Last Story, and Blue Dragon. They're all great. Put them on the PC. Put them out there. Another thing that he could be working on, we talked about spiritual successors and things like that. There is the much rumored Final Fantasy VI Remake. There was that article that came out a while ago, and they said, well, if we were going to remake Final Fantasy VI, it would take 20 frickin' years. But the thing is, no one's asking you, Square Enix, to remake it in the same way that you're remaking Final Fantasy VII. We're just asking you to remake it in like an HD 2D style. That's all we're asking for here. Or maybe like a cel-shaded style, like a Chrono Trigger or a Dragon Quest kind of style. Just something like that. That's really what we're asking for. And put him in the helm. If he wants to do this, and he did it the first time, and he's in your good graces, put him at the helm. Let him spearhead this remake. How great would that be? I would absolutely adore that. Then I've got to say, as far as, let's say that this is Fantasian Dark Edge, and this is just a sequel, and it's a spiritual successor. Well, then I've just got to say, Fantasia was great. I really enjoyed it. I loved it, but there were some issues. And we need to talk about that. The balancing, the game balancing. Like, the original release on mobile, on Apple Arcade, was so freaking hard, so difficult, that whenever they made Neo Dimension, they went ahead and they said, okay, the original difficulty level is now going to be the hard difficulty level, and then we're going to make a normal difficulty level. Well, guess what? Whenever you got to the second part of the game, even the normal difficulty level was freaking hard. Those bosses were crazy, and if you played the second part of the game, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You needed to have the exact right characters, in the exact right, doing the exact right things every single round, with the exact right gems equipped, and if you didn't have everything all set up perfectly beforehand, you died. And it just is what it is. And to me, one of the joys of a Final Fantasy game is approaching various bosses in different ways, and having to approach every single boss in one particular way really saps the fun out of the game. So I do hope that they do rebalance some of the bosses and things like that. Also, I would like to see the growth map happen straight from the beginning of the game, rather than like delegate that to the ending part of the game, you know? That would be a nice change as well. So yeah. Now I want to hear from y'all. What do you think about this news? And do you think that he's going to be making the Final Fantasy VI Remake? Do you think it's going to be a prequel? Do you think it's going to be a sequel? Do you think it's going to be your spiritual successor? Do you think this is just going to be Fantasian Dark Edge? What do you think's going on with Sakaguchi? But he wants to make a Final Fantasy VI spiritual successor, and I say, let him cook. Let him do it. Let him do whatever it is that he wants to do. But now tell me what all of y'all feel and think about this, and as always, have a good day.